Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Star Wars Talk here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campion. It's an honor and a privilege, as it is, every day to have you guys joining me here as we talk about the greatest thing in the world, Star Wars, our favorite movie stuff in the world. Anyway, hey guys, listen, I know it's been a couple of weeks since we had a Star Wars Talk. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, I had some things come up, couldn't do it on a Sunday. And then, of course, as I turn my audio off over here, and then, of course, last week, it was my wife's birthday, and I had to take my wife out of town for the weekend, so that happens, but we are back to talk about Star Wars. So, here's what we're going to do today. I've got 4 topics that I picked out that you guys emailed into me. Once we get through those, we're going to go over the live topics and questions, and we're just going to do that, probably do about a 45-minute show today, talking Star Wars, so let's dive into it with the first question today. And the first question today comes to us from Jacob Austin, who writes, absolutely love the Star Wars Talk show. Thank you so much, Jacob. In episode 1, Obi-Wan said that he felt something elusive. Is it possible he could possibly be sensing Snoke at all, considering that Snoke has existed since then? Just a thought that came to mind when rewatching the entire Star Wars saga. May the Force be with you. All right. Thanks a lot for the question, Jacob. And, you know, a lot of questions still surround Snoke. And what's the deal with Snoke? You know, who was he? All that kind of stuff. A lot of people had all these different theories and yada, yada, yada. So, it is natural as a fan to continue to be searching for connections to Snoke to other things throughout the Star Wars galaxy. And you reference, you know, in episode 1, Obi-Wan said, I sense something elusive. Could he have been talking about Snoke? The definitive answer to that is no, absolutely not. Why? Because at the time, George Lucas had never conceived of Snoke. There was no such thing as Snoke. Like, now, retroactively, we know there was such thing as Snoke, but at the time, there was no such thing as Snoke in the galaxy. So clearly, the intent of the filmmakers at the time, in which case was George Lucas, the intent of the filmmaker was not, he's sensing this guy out there named Snoke. That was never George Lucas's intention. Since we know for a fact that was never his intention, then the only way you can force fit, pun, didn't mean that. The only way you can force fit the events of that movie with Obi-Wan saying something elusive, the only way you can make that fit the whole Snoke theory is if you force that square-shaped fact into a circular-shaped theory. It doesn't fit. It just doesn't work. Now, if you could make an argument that George Lucas had thought about Snoke and was thinking about episodes 7, 8, and 9 at the time that he was doing Star Wars Episode 1, and he might have been thinking about, then maybe there's a discussion to be had, but we know we're miles away from that. So, no, there is no way, shape, or form Obi-Wan was talking about Snoke. Could the filmmakers today retroactively change the meaning of that? Well, sure, but then you could change the meaning to anything. You could say, J.J. Abrams going into episode 9 could make Rey taste a really bad bowl of potato soup. And then he could say, all the way back in episode 1, when Obi-Wan says, I sense something elusive, J.J. could say that Obi-Wan was talking about, in the future, there's going to be this character named Rey who has a bad bowl of potato soup, and it's terrible. And he could say he's talking about that. So yes, you could retroactively go back and change the meaning, but that's what you would have to do. On its surface, the plain meaning was, no, he wasn't talking about Snoke. So, totally fair question to ask, but since we know that Snoke wasn't even an idea yet at the time when that was done, there was no way that was the intention of the filmmaker at the time. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next topic today comes to us from YoMamma's Llamma, who writes, my brother and I saw The Last Jedi together, and for the most part really liked it. However, we both commented that Snoke seemed really powerful in comparison to how easily he was killed. Rian Johnson was most likely trying to show Snoke's arrogance with drastic displays of power, and it was effective. But do you think he went just a little bit too overboard? All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. First of all, let me say that I don't think Snoke was killed all that easily. When you consider what lengths Kylo Ren had to go to mask his intention and mask what was going on to Snoke and coordinate Snoke having that lightsaber there, turning it on mentally and ripping through him. That wasn't easy. That was tough. So let's just say that. That was tough. That wasn't easy at all. However, I cannot help but agree with you a little bit on that. That look, I like what they did with Snoke and Kylo and all that kind of stuff. I really do. However, I do feel like one of the mistakes, because I'm like you, I like The Last Jedi. I like it a lot. But I also have several problems with the film that do bother me. And it's okay. You're allowed, by the way, guys, you're allowed, imagine this, to like a movie and yet acknowledge some of the problems in it. You're allowed to do that. Anyway, I like The Last Jedi quite a bit, but there are a number of items in The Last Jedi that I have a problem with. Canto Bight, the way they used Benicio del Toro's character, blah, blah. But I think one of the other problems I have, although not as big of a problem, granted, was I think I kind of agree with you that they might have overdone it in showing how powerful Snoke is. Because Snoke did come across just a little bit too powerful. He almost seemed omnipotent in some ways. Like the sheer display of power was a little bit too much. Like the guy that was that powerful, he didn't need Kylo Ren. He didn't need anybody else. He could have just walked through the galaxy and go, death, 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 death. I mean, it was a little bit too powerful. I agree. Like, I like the way you expressed in the email that, you know, you wanted to showcase just how menacing and threatening he was. And I get that. But I am with you on the idea that they might have gone a little bit overboard with just like how unbeatable he is. And that the only way that they were able to stop him was basically by Kylo being able to deceive him and trick him. And that was the only way to stop him. So on that level, I think I agree. Overall, I really like the Snoke character, and I like how they handled him, and I like what they did with him and all that kind of stuff. But I will agree with you on that I think maybe in that scene, they probably overstated how powerful he was. So, hey, maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but that's just kind of the way I feel about it. All right, let's move on to the third topic. And the third emailed in topic today comes to us from H. Ray, who writes, during your open mic show, you mentioned a referendum on DC movies. But the fans had me thinking, being one of the many Star Wars fans who didn't like The Last Jedi, do you think the trajectory of the next movie will have a similar outcome? I'm not planning on seeing Solo, even if it's said to be good. What are your thoughts? Well, I appreciate the email, H-Ray, but let me say this. To say you're a Star Wars fan, but then to follow that up saying, I'm not going to go see the next Star Wars movie, even if it's good. I say this as a brother Star Wars fan, okay? With all the love of a brother Star Wars fan. That's ridiculous thinking. Now, it's totally okay. What is totally okay is to go, oh, you know what? I didn't like The Last Jedi, because not everybody liked The Last Jedi. Nothing wrong with that. All films subjective. So if you didn't like The Last Jedi, you didn't like The Last Jedi, no problem. And if not liking The Last Jedi makes you a little trigger shy about, you know, investing more time, energy, and whatever to going to see the next movie, that's totally understandable too. That's completely understandable. Where it gets a tad ridiculous, though, is if, you know, Solo comes out and it's out for a week and you hear from fans. Now, this is all, you know, a hypothesis, right? This is just all, you know, a completely theoretical situation. But you're the one who set it up. So if the movie comes out and audiences are raving about it and your friends are telling you it's really good and the critics like it a lot and everybody's saying it's really good, what's the point of crossing our arms and stomping our feet saying, I'm not seeing it anyway? That I don't understand. Totally understand, hey, I didn't like the last movie, so I'm apprehensive about supporting the next. That's fine. That's fine. But if you hear from even people you trust and people you know that liked it and your friends you're seeing, if you start hearing from everybody that's good, what's the point of not going to see it if you're a Star Wars fan? Like that's the part that, now, if you're apprehensive and then you hear from friends and everything that they didn't like it, then fine. Then you make the decision that you don't want to go see it. That's fine too. But I think it's a little ridiculous as a Star Wars fan, if even people you know and respect in your friend seat and everybody says, hey, this one's really good, to go, well, I'm not going to see it anyway. Why? I'm not sure, just because. That's a little ridiculous. That part's a little bit ridiculous. But again, that's only in a very specific scenario that you've set up there, that it comes out and it's good and still not wanting to see it. That part's a little bit ridiculous. Now, as far as the comparison to the DC thing, I can understand where the question is coming from, but let me point out some of the major differences between the situation. Now, if you don't know, the genesis of this issue comes up from the fact that, Justice League didn't, I think everybody, even the most hardcore DC fans will say, Justice League did not do as well as we all hoped it would do. Fair enough to say. Now, I have made the statement that I believe that basically Justice League coming out and being the lowest box office grossing film of all the DCEU films, like even lower than Suicide Squad, lower than Batman vs. Superman, lower than Man of Steel, lower than Wonder Woman. It's the lowest box office total, when I think we would all agree a Justice League movie should have been the number one box office film for the DCU. It ends up being the lowest one. I have made the argument that that is a referendum by the fans saying we have lost hope or are rapidly losing hope in the DCEU. So out comes The Last Jedi, and you're wondering if it's kind of the same thing. I can understand the question. I do. I understand the question. Let me point out why it's a massively different scenario, though. Like night and day massively different. And I know this isn't what you're doing, HR. I know this isn't what you're doing, but there are some people out there who didn't like The Last Jedi, and there's nothing wrong with not liking The Last Jedi, but there are some people, there's a small segment of people who didn't like The Last Jedi, amongst the people who didn't like The Last Jedi, who feel like they have to come up with excuses for why they didn't like it. And they feel like they have to justify why they didn't like it. It's like they're not secure enough in their own opinions that, hey, just the fact that you didn't like it is good enough. You don't need an excuse to like it. If you're somebody who didn't like The Last Jedi, you don't need an excuse for not liking it. You don't need to justify not liking it. Film is subjective. You watched the movie, it didn't work for you, and you didn't like it. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But there is a small segment of people amongst those who didn't like The Last Jedi who are fairly weak-minded, and therefore they don't trust their own opinion so much that they have to make excuses to try to justify that they didn't like the movie, even though they don't need to do that. And one of the ways we've seen this manifest, it's laughable, but seeing people trying to portray the box office success of The Last Jedi as some sort of failure. And that's just when I know somebody's a joke at that point. Because here's the thing. The box office success of Star Wars The Last Jedi is not a subjective situation. It is objectively a massive hit. By every objective measurement, there are measurements here, it's a massive hit. To try to portray the financial result of The Last Jedi as anything short of that is just laughably weak and laughably pathetic. And what you have to do is you have to create spin in order to look at it as anything other than a big, massive hit. You have to create fake spin, and you have to create alternative facts, and you have to do all this twisting and turning in order to try to make it look like The Last Jedi was anything short of a financial hit. Here are facts, all right? What I'm about to say is not spin, it's not perspective, and it's not subjective. These are facts when it comes to The Last Jedi, okay? Fact number one. Star Wars The Last Jedi is the second highest grossing Star Wars film of all time. That's not spin, that's not perspective, that's not a subjective opinion, that's not an alternative fact, that is a fact. Star Wars The Last Jedi is the number 2 highest grossing Star Wars film of all time. Here's another fact. Star Wars The Last Jedi was the number 1 domestic box office film of 2017. Not Beauty and the Beast, not Jumanji. The number 1 box office domestic film of 2017 was Star Wars The Last Jedi. That's a fact. Not spin, not whatever, it's a fact. Here's another fact. Star Wars The Last Jedi was the number 1 worldwide box office film of 2017. Again, not Jumanji, not Beauty and the Beast, not any of the other big hit films of 2017 came close to Star Wars The Last Jedi. That's just a fact. Here's another fact. Star Wars The Last Jedi is the number 9 all-time worldwide box office film ever. That's not a subjective opinion. That's not a spin. That's not whatever. That's a fact. Out of all the tens of thousands of films in film history, the number 9 all-time box office film ever is Star Wars The Last Jedi. Here's another fact. Star Wars The Last Jedi is the number 7 all-time domestic box office film. Number 7 all-time. That's not a thought. That's not an opinion. That's not a spin. That's just the black and white fact. When you look at the black and white facts, short of opinion and spin, which is what you have to engage in heavy spin and heavy subjective twisting of the facts and whatever to try to portray the financial overwhelming success of Star Wars The Last Jedi. As anything short of that, you have to get involved in all this deceptive stuff of spin and looking at it a certain way and doing that. But if you just look at the facts, number 1 domestic film of 2017, number 1 worldwide film of 2017, number 2 all-time box office Star Wars film, number 9 all-time worldwide box office film, number 7 all-time domestic film. These are all facts. The film made $1.3 billion. More, by the way, than Black Panther. I know it's weird to think about that. It's a movie that made more than Black Panther, and yet there are people out there trying to spin it in its negative way. And here's the thing. If you're one of these people who makes up this stuff to try to make it look like The Last Jedi was anything but a massive financial success, let me give you a free bit of therapy. Imagine I'm putting my hand on your shoulder and patting you and saying, it's okay. You don't need anything else to justify if you didn't like it. It's okay if you didn't like it. If you didn't like The Last Jedi, you don't need to make excuses, and you don't need to you don't need to spin things. You don't need to come up with some kind of bogus, the evidence that backs up your stuff that you're just really just twisting and spinning. You don't need that. You didn't like it. That's it. That's all you need. You didn't like it. And there's nothing wrong with you for not liking it. And there's nothing wrong with the fact that you didn't like it. And you just need to embrace that and know that your opinion is good enough because it's your opinion. But yeah, the situation with getting back to the whole thing about the comparison to the Justice League thing, whereas Justice League comes out, is the lowest of all the DCU films. Star Wars Last Jedi comes out, it's the second highest grossing Star Wars film of all time. Justice League comes out, makes $650 million. Star Wars The Last Jedi comes out, literally makes more than double that at over $1.3 billion. Is on the top 10 all-time domestic, worldwide, number 1 movie of 2017, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think you can compare the two situations. And again, I just think you need to take a breath, take a step back, and just look at the facts. And by the way, these facts about how financially successful Star Wars The Last Jedi was and how big of a hit the movie is does not in any way speak to its quality. Like, if you didn't like Star Wars The Last Jedi, the fact that it is a big hit does not in any way suggest you're wrong for not liking it. Not at all. Any more than some great little indie film that might be one of the best movies of the year but completely flopped at the box office. Just because it flops at the box office does not mean it's not a great movie. And even though I like The Last Jedi, just because it's a big hit financially does not mean it's a great movie, and in no way contradicts your opinion for not liking it. So you just need to breathe and accept that, and realize you don't need to make up fake stuff and make yourself look stupid by pretending that Star Wars The Last Jedi wasn't a big financial hit, when all the facts clearly point to the fact that it is a big financial hit. But that in no way discredits your opinion for not liking it. You're allowed to not like it. It's just a movie. It's Star Wars, it's life, but it's still at the end of the day just a movie. And if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. You don't need to make up crap to try to make yourself feel better for not liking it. It's totally cool if you didn't like it. Anyway, that's just my thought on all that. Let's move on now to the final emailed in topic today. And the final emailed in topic today comes to us from Melissa Tileman. And Melissa Tileman writes, I found myself not being very excited about the Solo movie, but then when the trailers finally hit, it got me looking forward to the movie a lot more. Just heard that a new trailer is coming tomorrow. By the way, this email came in yesterday, so she's actually talking about today. Just heard that a new trailer is coming today, and I'm very excited about it. What do you think we're going to get in the new trailer? And yeah, for those of you who may not have heard, we are getting a new Solo: A Star Wars trailer tonight. Who knows? Maybe the trailer will have dropped by the time we're finished this show. And maybe there's going to be a new trailer out there by the time we're done. But there's a new trailer coming. And so the question is, what do we think we're going to get in this trailer? Here's what I'm hoping we're going to get in the trailer. All right. First of all, what I'm hoping we get in the trailer is a sense of what is this movie about. The first trailer came, great. It was just the first initial trailer showing us flashes and glimpses. Hey, look, there's Lando. Hey, look, there's Han. Hey, look, there's Chewie, blah, blah, blah. There's the Falcon. For some reason, there's the giant space tentacle monster. Oh my God, I hope that's not space whales. Anyway, they did that, and that's fine. But now we're getting into the second trailer. I want to get a little bit of a sense of the story. Now, we know from the first trailer that he's like hooking up with Woody Harrelson's crew for something. Just give us a little hint. Give us a basic understanding of, okay, in this movie, Han is on a mission to do this. That's all. Don't give away any spoilers or anything like that. What I'm just really hoping to see is a little bit of a glimpse as to what the movie's going to be about. Just give us that. What I think we're going to get into it in this new trailer, what I think we're going to get, so there's what I was hoping we're going to get. Now, what I think we are going to get, I think we're going to get a glimpse of Han meeting Chewie. I think we're going to get our first glimpse of Han actually meeting Chewie. So that's what I think we're going to get there. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100%, nobody's told me that that's what we're going to be getting. Nobody's told me that's what's going to be happening in the movie. Nothing like that. But I get the feeling that in this new trailer, and I'll know within a matter of hours whether this is true, I think we're going to get a shot of Han and Chewie meeting for the first time. So that's what I think we're getting out of it. But again, back to the thing that I hope we get out of it is a little sense of the arc of the story. A little sense of the arc of the story. Now, I'm going to let you guys know something. Nah, not yet. Not yet. I'll save it for later. Forget that I said that. I'll save it for later. So that's what I'm hoping to see and what I think we're going to get out of this new trailer for Star Wars, the Solo story. The Solo story. Solo, a Star Wars story. What a stupid name. I'm just going to call the movie Star Wars Solo. That's just what I'm going to call it from now on. That's really what it should be called. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go to the live stuff now. You guys have been sending us some live questions. We still got about 20 minutes here. So let's take some of your live questions, and we're going to start things off with Adam Griffin, who writes in, Solo is tracking at 400 million domestically total, which is way more than I would have thought. Solo is tracking at 400 million domestic total. If it holds true, can it make 600 million foreign to cross 1 billion? Rogue One did 532 million domestically and 523 million foreign to get to over $1 billion worldwide. Well, here's the thing. I have been saying forever that I do not believe that Solo can get to $1 billion. Now, I also never thought it would have that big of an opening, but now there are some tracking numbers out there saying it's going to open to $150 million, which I find really high, to be honest with you. I find that high. But, I mean, if it does work out to be that, I find 400 million domestically to be high. If it can actually reach that number domestically, I find that to be a high number. But, if those numbers are true and accurate, then let's play a little what-if game. It all comes down to the quality of the film. If the movie is really good, and word does, like H-Ray was kind of like speculating, if the word of the film comes out and the word is that it's really good, and more people, it gets some legs, some traction, if it was tracking at 400 million, then that could hit 500 million. And if it hits 500 million, it very well could do over 500 million worldwide, and it could cross that $1 billion mark. Again, I have a hard time imagining it, but if these numbers are true, it's possible. I have been saying from day one that Solo will not hit $1 billion worldwide. But with all these tracking numbers coming out, I'm starting to suspect maybe it could. I'll still put $5 on it not. But let's go with this theory. If the projection numbers are good at 400, and if the movie actually ends up being quite good to get positive word of mouth, to give a little boost to that. It could give like a 20% boost. If that's the case, now you're talking 500 million. If it gets 500 million domestic, could it get 500 million worldwide? I believe the answer to that question is yes, it could get 500 million worldwide. Now you are looking at your scenario where Solo could hit $1 billion. Again, that's a lot of things that have to happen. Number one, that tracking number has to be fairly accurate. Number two, the movie has to be good enough to get positive word of mouth to get extra people in to go see it. Number three, that extra boost has to equivalent to about 20%. If it does, then the worldwide has to be able to mirror it, which is possible it could. And then all of that together could create a scenario in which Star Wars Solo does indeed hit the $1 billion mark to make it the fourth film in a row in the franchise that crosses $1 billion. MCU will never do that. DCU will never do that. Like, none of these things. If Solo makes $1 billion, it'll be the fourth film in a row in the franchise that crosses the $1 billion mark since The Force Awakens launched. I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has never had 3 films in a row do $1 billion, and Star Wars has done it, and maybe it hits 4. But again, that's a lot of ifs and maybes. It's got to do this, it's got to do this, it's got to do this, and it's got to do this. And if it does all 4, then maybe we're looking at a scenario where Star Wars Solo can hit $1 billion. So I still would bet against it, but you never know, right? I mean, stranger things has happened. We'll have to see. Let's see now. Next up comes to us from Stephen Foley, who writes, disturbing trend in the Star Wars fandom from those who didn't like The Last Jedi. Some are now delineating themselves from those who did by calling themselves Star Wars purists or traditionalists. This attempt to marginalize seems very it is very topic, and you're a moron if you're doing it. You're a moron if you're doing that. Sorry, you're a moron. Like, look, I hate Star Wars. I hate the prequels. But you don't see me, like, but look, anybody who ever says to me that they like the prequels, I go, hey, I disagree, but I celebrate that you like it. That's great. And we're fellow Star Wars fans together. But you liked some of the films that I didn't like at all. That's fine. We're all Star Wars fans. Again, this type of stuff that you're describing, Stephen, is again a symptom of incredibly weak people. Very, very weak people who are so pathetic that they just can't, they are so weak in not being able to handle that other people think differently than they do. They're so incapable of grasping that the majority of Star Wars fans like The Last Jedi. They are so incapable of wrapping their heads around and accepting that some people like what they don't like, that what they then have to do is to not crumble like the little weak, pathetic beings they are, to not crumble and fall to pieces. They have to segregate themselves out. Or really what they're doing is trying to segregate other people away from them and come up with new boxes to call. We are Star Wars purists. No, you're not. You're just a weak-minded idiot. Not because you don't like The Last Jedi. I know some die-hard, lifelong Star Wars fans who don't like The Last Jedi. Nothing wrong with that. That's great. And yet we're all still Star Wars fans together. I didn't like the prequels, but I don't delineate myself out from Star Wars fandom or delineate anybody who does like the prequels out of Star Wars fandom. No, we're all Star Wars fans. That doesn't mean we all love everything in Star Wars. It just means with its pros and its cons, with its strengths and its weaknesses, overall, we love Star Wars. Like, don't get me going on my siblings. My siblings, I love my siblings. Now, let me turn it around. My siblings love me. But that doesn't mean they ignore the fact that I have some weaknesses in my character and that I have some flaws and I have some personality traits that probably bug the hell out of them. But they love me. With the good, the bad, the strengths and the weaknesses, they love me. And as a Star Wars fan, I love Star Wars. Doesn't mean I love everything in Star Wars. Doesn't mean I love everything about Star Wars. But overall, its strengths, its weaknesses, its pros and its cons, I love Star Wars. And that's where a healthy fandom needs to be. That we're not sticking our heads in the sands and ignoring the things that we don't like. But at the same time, it's not like we ostracize anybody out of it for not liking something that we do, because it's all subjective anyway. So yeah, Steve, you're right. I mean, and who knows, maybe it's a good thing that people like weak-minded idiots like that would identify themselves. So, they can be culled off from the herd, I guess, metaphorically speaking. So I don't know. All I know is this. In the same way, I've got some great friends who did not like The Last Jedi, and they still just consider themselves Star Wars fans with everybody else who did like The Last Jedi. Just like I hate the prequels, but I still consider myself a Star Wars fan with even other Star Wars fans who did like the prequels. That's what healthy fandom is. And you're right. This type of stuff that you're talking about is cancerous and it's toxic. And it needs to go away. And it's really a shame that we've seen this type of stuff in comic book movie debating and in other stuff. It's really sad to see it creeping its way into the Star Wars fandom. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. Okay, Orange Hand writes, Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things wants to play young Leia. Despite her talent and uncanny resemblance to Carrie Fisher, I imagine people will hate the idea of anyone else playing these characters. Well, I mean, first of all, who cares what Millie Bobby Brown wants to do? Who cares what Meryl Streep wants to do? Who cares what any actor wants to do? Every actor wants to play a big role in a big major hit. That's every actor wants that, so who cares? Now, just like I think while there's a lot of trepidation about Alden Ehrenreich playing a young Han Solo, most of the Star Wars fandom has been, I mean, we understand if you're going to do a young Solo movie, you need a young Solo. So most, even though a lot of the fandom is a little, has some reservations about it, for the most part, we accept that that's the case. I think if Lucasfilm decided to do a movie about a young Leia, and God, I hope they don't, just because I'm tired of us getting young version of this character movies. I'm tired of that. But anyway, if they did, I suspect that we would get the same thing. I think there would be some trepidation. I think there would be some cautiousness, but generally an understanding that, well, if we want to tell a story about Princess Leia, obviously Carrie Fisher can't do it, so we need somebody. And it's not replacing her in the episodic films, it's telling a young story about her. I think there would be a general acceptance of it, even with trepidation and some hesitancy and some cautiousness. So we'd have to kind of sit back and see how that would all play out. Let's see. Scott Ragland writes, if they reboot the DCEU, I'd like a Batman murder mystery with Clayface. Sorry, Scott, we're not here to talk about the DCU. We're here to talk about Star Wars. Sorry, man. Let's see. Chris Martin writes, do you think Kylo knows let me try that again. Do you think that Kylo knows that Vader turned back to the light at the end of Return of the Jedi, but doesn't care? Yeah, I do. And the novelization stuff is stupid, but Snoke was talking, I believe there was a scene in one of the novelizations of The Force Awakens that Snoke was basically relaying the story about what happened with Vader. That Vader, in a moment of weakness, let it all go, So, yeah, I do believe the understanding is that he knows what happened to Vader, but that was Vader's, to them, from the dark side's point of view, that was Vader's moment of weakness. That the true Vader was the Vader who conquered the galaxy. That's the true Vader. Not the dude who had just a little moment of weakness before he died. They don't care about that. So yeah, I do believe that the kind of the scenario that you're painting there, Chris, I interpret it, and maybe I'm wrong, but I interpret it exactly as you laid it out. That they know about him turning back to the good side, but that's irrelevant to them. Because that was just a moment of weakness and not the true Vader. To them, from their point of view, if you will. Chris Martin writes, follow-up, could Luke appear to Kylo and reveal that he was able to turn him back? Again, since I assume, and what was kind of hinted in the novelization, that Kylo already knows, I don't think that's going to be a part of the discussion. I do think Mark Hamill appears in Episode 9. I don't know that for a fact, I'm just speculating. But I believe Mark Hamill does appear in Episode 9, either as a Force ghost or as alive. He never actually died in The Last Jedi. Anyway. But I don't think, hey, kid, don't you understand that Vader finally saw the light and he came back to the good side? I don't think that has anything to do with it. I don't think that'll be a part of it. I could be wrong, but that's my guess. Jabin Carter writes, I don't think we've seen Kylo's true potential in the dark side yet. Where's that raw strength Luke was talking about? Oh, I think we've seen a lot of raw strength. I mean, to be able to in a battle of force, of basically the force, him being able to cloak his true intentions for what he was about to pull on Snoke, I believe was a great exhibit of power. I believe that was a great exhibit of power. And look, he did some things in Star Wars The Force Awakens that we never saw Vader do, like stopping a blaster bolt in midair. He has shown great exhibits of strength. Has he learned how to channel all of that strength and power yet? No. Has Rey learned to channel and focus and use all the power that she has? Obviously not. So not quite there yet, but I think Kylo has exhibited a lot of stuff. But I do agree with you. He hasn't reached his full potential yet. He's only scratching the surface. And that's like one of my arguments that I have, and fun arguments, good arguments, that I have with some fellow Star Wars fans about Rey. It's like, Rey was too powerful. I'm like, are you kidding? The way they're setting up Rey, I think she's just scratching the surface of how much power she has. And I think that's true of Kylo as well. I think, she was able to mind control the stormtrooper. That's the most basic of the Force uses. I mean, we saw in Rebels, we saw Ezra be able to do that really relatively quickly. But I think Rey is far more powerful than Ezra. Maybe even her potential is far more powerful than Luke. So what we've seen Rey do is barely her just discovering what she can do. And I think the same is true as Kylo. I think you're right. I don't think we've seen the true potential there yet. I think he's shown us glimpses of that pure, unfettered strength, but he hasn't quite untapped all of it yet. So again, I don't know that for a fact. I'm just speculating as a Star Wars fan. All right. Chris Martin writes, I know you're not a big fan of Ahsoka Tano. That's an understatement. Although I did like her in Rebels. I'd love to have a hot toy of her character. Her showdown with Vader was killer, even though the ending of season 2 was kind of a cop-out. Yeah, it's funny because while I do not like the Ahsoka Tano character, there's another great example. I don't like the Ahsoka Tano character. That doesn't mean I shut out people in the Star Wars fandom who do. That's ridiculous. Anyway, I don't like the Ahsoka Tano character, fine. But even I kind of like the way they used her in Rebels. So much so that in that final epic battle, there was so much great drama. It wasn't the action of it. It was the drama of her final confrontation with Anakin that made that so great. And what made me so disappointed with that cop-out ending and the way they ended it. I thought it was a real cop-out of an ending. But hey, it is what it is. Do they not have an Ahsoka Tano hot toy? That actually kind of surprises me. Let me do a quick search here. Tano hot toy. Let me see if they've got anything here. Let's see. I'm finding some images here, but maybe they're not hot toys. Maybe they're from another company or something. I'm finding a couple things here, but again, I'm not sure if they're actual from Hot Toy. Nope. These are Diamond Comic Collector Series stuff. Yeah, so maybe they haven't. Actually, I would have thought, I find that a little bit surprising. I think I probably would have thought that they did do one. Considering how popular the character is with a number of people, I would have thought they did do one. And you know what? As much as I don't like the Ahsoka Tano character, it's a great designed character. The look of the character is wonderful. And I think the Ahsoka Tano character would make a great Hot Toy collectible. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm surprised they don't have one. My goodness. All right. Chris Martin writes, but John, I need a Vader Rebels Hot Toy. With the Thrawn Hot Toy is... the Thrawn Hot Toy is amazing. I got the Thrawn one brand new for $150? What? Hold a second. Again, this whole show is just John looking up hot toys. Sorry. Thrawn Hot Toy. Okay, let me see this. Grand Admiral Thrawn 6 scale figure from Sideshow Collectible. Okay, so the one I'm seeing isn't from Rebels. The one I'm seeing is the one from the novels, the incarnation of the novels, I think. Thrawn... Let me see. What if I look up Thrawn Rebels Hot Toy? I don't see anything. Oh, there's a Funko Pop. There's a Hasbro action one. So I'm not seeing the one you're seeing. Is there really a Hot Toy one? Do me a favor, guys. Jump into the comment section. Leave a link to where the Hot Toy, the Grand Admiral Thrawn from Rebels is. For $150? They don't, and it's a full 1/6 scale figure from Hot Toys, and it's only $150? I've never seen that. That's awesome, if it's true. Okay, let's go on here. This one comes to us from George Rodriguez, who writes, back in 1999, was Ewan McGregor under pressure in a similar way to the new Han Solo? I was 4, so I wouldn't know. Let me try this again. Back in 1999, was Ewan McGregor under pressure in a similar way? Oh, as in how Alden Ehrenreich is probably under a lot of pressure? Oh, you're damn right. Damn right he was. Now, the one thing, the advantage that Ewan McGregor had was that Ben wasn't the lead character of the new movies, right? He was a major character in the movies for sure, but he wasn't the lead character, so not all the pressure was on him. I mean, Liam Neeson was really like the lead guy of the first one. Then you can make the argument that Anakin and Padme became the lead characters of the other ones. But so he never had, especially at first, he never had the burden of carrying that on his shoulders. Alden Ehrenreich is a little bit of a different situation with Solo. Because not only is he taking on a beloved character, he's taking on a character who this is his movie. The movie's actually called Solo. So in that sense, Ewan McGregor didn't face the same pressure. He faced the same kind of pressure, but since he was more of a secondary character, especially in that first movie, I'd say he didn't face the same amount of pressure and scrutiny that Alden Ehrenreich is facing. So, and not to mention, by the time he played Obi-Wan, by the time Ewan McGregor played Obi-Wan, it had been ages since Obi-Wan had been on the screen, and ages since Alec Guinness had passed away. This one, we just had Harrison Ford as Han Solo a couple years ago. So, is it the same pressure? No. Alden Ehrenreich, I believe, has experienced a different level of pressure. Is it the same kind of pressure? Sure, he faced the same kind of pressure. I just don't think on the same level that Alden Ehrenreich is facing right now. Just my thoughts. All right, next one comes to us from Chris Martin, who writes, John, there is a meme I shared in the podcast group where Kylo and Luke have a conversation where Kylo says, "Have you come to save my soul?" Luke says, "I came here with green milk and embarrass my nephew, and I'm all out of green milk." I didn't see that one. So for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, Chris Martin, I'm guessing, is a Patreon supporter. And one of the benefits of being a Patreon supporter is we have this exclusive Facebook group for just all of us who are Patreon supporters, right? And the people in there share this great stuff all the time. Always wonderful, fun, positive movie discussion stuff. Lots of disagreement, lots of debating, but it's always done in a positive, fun way. And I get a crack. I've seen a number of memes that have been put up in there, but I haven't seen that one yet. I'm going to have to go in there and check that one out. Thank you for sharing that with the group. Thanks for sharing that with me. And now I got to go check that out because that sounds absolutely hilarious. All right. Next one. Rob D writes, "Take Sundays off, man." What the fuck? Wifey time fun. Yeah, well, wifey is out of town right now. And I'm making sure that we arrange ourselves, that we get our time. So, but yes, I am working on, because as you guys know, I do shows 7 days a week. I don't have a day off. I work 7 days a week. I am working at getting us to the point where I can take one day off. And I'm thinking that'll be a Saturday. That'll take Saturdays off, but I'm not there yet, but hopefully I'll get there soon. But thank you for the encouragement, Rob D. I appreciate that. Let's see. Next one comes to us from Mr. Spider 336 writes, "Kylo is the last Solo, the last Organa, and the last Skywalker." Well, he's not really an Organa because there's no bloodline between him and the Organas because remember, Leia was adopted. So he has no bloodline to like Bail Organa. But anyway, Kylo is the last Solo, the last Organa, and the last Skywalker. And technically, he's not a Skywalker, but he does have a blood lineage to Darth Vader. And they were the New Hope. The way I see it, Ben is the last hope. I mean, there's still a lot of people in Star Wars who believe that Kylo can be redeemed. And maybe they'll do that. Maybe that is the direction JJ will go with it. I'm not sure. Personally, I don't think so. I think JJ set it up that, look, I call it the come to Jesus moment, right? Luke Skywalker faced his come to Jesus moment with his father Vader in the throne room when the Emperor encouraged him, "Strike your father down and take his place at my side." You know, when he gave him that kind of speech, that was Luke's come to Jesus moment where he made his choice. And his choice, throw the lightsaber away, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. That was his choice. To me, Kylo faced his come to Jesus moment on that safety hazard of a walkway with no handrails. And again, go back and watch The Force Awakens. They have handrails for the first 10 feet, and then the handrails disappear for the rest of the walkway. I don't get it. But anyway. So out on that walkway with his father, he had his moment. Embrace his father or kill his father. And whereas Luke decided to embrace his father, throw away the lightsaber, embrace the good side, Kylo's moment came, and he chose the opposite. And he chose to kill his dad. Now, you get into then The Last Jedi, and Rian Johnson just kind of reaffirms what JJ set up in the first one. That, yeah, even though now confronted with his mother and the idea of pulling the trigger to kill his mother, he hesitated for a second, but at the end of the day, nope, burn it all. Knowing that his mother may have been inside of that rebel base, he sent in rebels to kill everyone. And he knew his mother was in there. So Rian Johnson picked up on that thing that JJ started about, Kylo had made his choice. So I still don't see Kylo getting redeemed. I think he is the villain of the film. And maybe he goes out like Vader, or at the last moment he turns back and dies, but I think for the most part, we've seen Kylo Ren, to the point that even Leia said, there's no goodness left in him. And even Luke said, I can't save him anymore. And even Rey came to the conclusion, he's gone. I mean, he's all dark side now. So they all seem to get that, and I think that's what we as the fans have to just kind of accept too. But who knows? Maybe they'll do something different. Okay, guys, don't send, if you haven't sent in a question yet, don't send in anymore. I'm going to finish off these last few ones, and we'll call it a day. Gareth Tucson writes, if Leia was in Han's place in The Force Awakens, Kylo kill her? Yeah, I think so. Look, because remember, he struggled with it, right? He struggled with it with Han. I think he struggles with it with Leia too. It's a great question. Probably a question worth its own video over. But I think at the end of the day, he does the same thing. I think he struggles with it, he wrestles with it, and then he makes his choice, and his choice was to kill. So I think if Leia, was on that unsafe safety hazard of a walkway, I think he would have killed her too. But that's an interesting debate to have, though. Maybe he wouldn't. It's an interesting debate to have. George Rodriguez writes, do you have embarrassing Star Wars related memories? Oh, God. Yeah. Because look, I've been a Star Wars raging nerd before it was cool to be a Star Wars raging nerd. Yeah, I probably have several things. I remember one. I was not a cool kid by any stretch. I'm still not a cool kid, but I was never a cool kid. So surprise, surprise, I never had a lot of girls come into my bedroom when I was a kid. But I remember as a teenager having a girl come into my bedroom once and saw some Star Wars toys. Not going to deny it. Probably saw some Star Wars toys. Whatever little chance I had, and remember, this is how you think as a teenager. Whatever chance I thought I had at getting some boob access, probably disappeared. Boob access rescinded. The moment she came in and saw some Star Wars toys in my room. At that point, yeah, boob access rescinded. Boob access denied. At that point, even if there was any chance of that happening at the time. And there's kind of an embarrassing moment one. Yeah. So, and I don't know why I shared that. There's a new t-shirt for you. Boob access denied. Anyway. Hey, sorry. Hey, as a teenage dude, that's what you think. I know look, as teenagers, we're assholes. I mean, all of us. Teenage girls are assholes. Teenage boys are assholes. If you're a teenage boy, guess what? You're an asshole. If you were a teenage boy, guess what? You were an asshole. So was I. We were all really messed up. Anyway, Scott Ragland writes, sorry I sent a non-Star Wars question. Don't worry about it. We make mistakes. Wasn't thinking about it being Star Wars talk. My bad. Love your show and all you do for the film fan community. Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate that. No problem. Hey, man, we get talking about movies and you get carried away, so you're firing a movie question. Totally understandable. Don't sweat it. But thank you for sending that in. Samuel Varg writes, over under 3% that Luke went to the world between worlds from Rebels when he vanished. Ooh. Shit, son. I had never thought of that. Because remember, I've got this 5% theory. Look, Luke's dead. But having said that he's dead, you guys know I've got this 5% theory that I believe there's a 5% chance that he ain't dead. That when he disappeared on that rock on the island, he just teleported himself somewhere. Again, most likely is he's dead. Yeah. I'm just saying, but I think there's a 5% chance he might still be alive. But with that aside, this notion about that in-between place that we were introduced to in Rebels, I hadn't even considered that. Okay. 3% is a really low number. So I will take the over on 3%. I'll take the over. If you set it like 15, I'd probably take the under. But if you're going to set it as low as 3%, I'll take the over on 3%. Still highly unlikely, but at 3%, I'll take the over. Really nifty idea. Not something I'd even considered before. Okay, last two questions of the day. NTNLV16 writes, fact, in every trilogy, the sequel has made 30% less than the first installment. Interesting. The Last Jedi is actually the one that took the smallest drop. I am not aware of that. I know Empire Strikes Back took a dip. I am not aware of that. That is an interesting fact. I have to look that up, but that is an interesting, if that's true, that is a really interesting fact. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, man. Good research. Good research. As long as you're right, that's good research. And the final question today of Star Wars talk, perfect timing here, we're coming up to an hour. Luke's faith died and reborn both times looking at a Jedi temple burning from afar with an old friend. Coincidence? I think not. Yeah, there's some powerful imagery in that, isn't there? There is some powerful imagery in that. About that, like he's there with R2 looking at his temple burning down, loses his faith in himself and in the Jedi Order and everything. And then in The Last Jedi, sitting there, beautiful image, by the way, him and Yoda sitting there looking at the tree burning, but essentially the same thing. That's a really cool way of looking at it, man. That's a really, really cool way of looking at that. I like that. That's really cool. Okay, guys, that will do it for today's installment and this week's installment of Star Wars Talk. Thanks for being here and talking. Jump down to the comment section, leave your thoughts on any or all the topics that we discuss here today. Keep the conversation going with each other. And by the way, guys, we mentioned the Patreon campaign a couple of times. Do me a favor, if you like my programming, head on over to patreon.com/JohnCampia. Get all the information about what it means to be a Patreon supporter, how being a Patreon supporter keeps these shows on the air, and the benefits there are of being a Patreon supporter, like audio-only versions of these shows are available in podcast form to our Patreon supporters, the Facebook group, a few other things. Go check it out and see if you want to become a Patreon supporter too. If you don't, no problem. I'm just glad you're a Star Wars fan with us. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today for this installment of Star Wars Talk. Thanks for being here. My name's John Campia, and until the next video, bye-bye.